Quick measures are a great way to learn more about DAX. Now it's a bit similar like learning how to cook using a recipe book. You just pick your recipe, then get your ingredients, follow the instructions, and done is your dinner. Now in this video we're going to have a look how to use quick measures to write your own DAX formulas. You're developing your report in Power BI and you want to extend your analysis with some calculations. Well, then you need to learn more about DAX. But maybe you don't have a clue where to start, or you don't want to become a DAX expert, but you want to have insights straight away. Well, then quick measures are the way to go. Now let's have a look at how to use quick measures and also how to go from quick measures to writing the measures on your own. And as an example, we're going to do some time intelligence calculation. Now let's start by building a simple visualization where we create a breakdown by the different years and quarters and then show the sum of sales amount. So here in my dim date table, we have a date field, which I'm going to drag onto my visualization, which is a matrix visualization. I'm going to expand one level down in a hierarchy so that we have the quarterly breakdown. And then I'm going to go to my sales table from which I take the sales amount. Okay. Now, if you drag and drop it onto your visualization, then by default it takes the sum of the sales amount. But we could also choose a different type of aggregation by clicking here on sales amount and choosing, for example, the average, minimum, or the maximum. However, at some point you probably want to take it one step further. And then you need to be able to write your own DAX measures. And quick measures help you to do this. Now, first of all, you need to understand the difference between an implicit measure and an explicit measure. When we drag a column just like sales amount onto our visualization, then Power BI creates an implicit measure for us. This is a calculation that only exists for this visualization. So we cannot reuse it or refer back to it when we build other calculations. Now, an explicit measure can be reused and we can refer back to it. So let's have a look how we can calculate the sales amount, but then as an explicit measure. So I'm going to go here to FCD sales and then click on new measure. And in the formula bar, what comes in front of the equal sign, that's going to be the name of a measure. So this is going to be total sales. And we can just use a simple sum function selected by pressing tab. And we want to take the sum of the sales amount column. So FCT sales, sales amount column, selected by pressing tab and close your brackets. So here you see we have now total sales as an explicit measure, which we then also can drag onto our visualization. And you see it gives me exactly the same as the sales amount, but then as an explicit measure. Just looks a little bit different, but that's formatting. Now let's take this one step further. So now I would like to have the total year to date sales amount. We can use quick measures to create this measure. Okay. Now when we create a new quick measure, we have a couple of different options. We can go here to the ribbon, click on new quick measure, or we go here to the table, new quick measure. We can also go here to the field, total sales, and then click on new quick measure. Or fourth option is to go over here to total sales and then new quick measure, which is usually the way that I do it, because then it already fills out the quick measure template with the fields that you have on this visualization. Okay, so let's do that. And the new quick measures dialog box pops up where we can choose the calculation type. So we have different buckets like the aggregate per category, filters, etc. And the one that we are interested in now is the time intelligence bucket, where we have year to date, quarter to date, month to date, and several others. Now, we want to have the year to date total, so let's go for that one, where we just need two things. We need the base value and we need a date field. Okay, now the base value is total sales. Okay, so because I already dragged total sales onto our visualization before and I clicked on total sales, then new quick measure, it already is filled out. Okay, however, if this one would not have been there, you would have to go to FCT sales and then over here choose sales amount, drag it onto the base value. While the date field comes from the dim date table. So I just drag that field onto date. This is the only thing it needs. Then you click here on OK, and it creates this explicit measure that gives you the total year-to-date sales for you. So it pops up here on the right hand side where we now see sales amount YTD for year to date. And let's see if that works. Okay, so for quarter one, it's exactly the same. Then we have quarter two, which is the sum of quarter one and two, and continues like that until the end of the year. And then for 2019, it restarts again. So here we have our year to date measure. All right, now let's have a look at the underlying DAX code for this measure that was created for us. Okay, so you just simply have to click on it, go to your formula bar. And over here, this looks quite complicated if you have not seen DAX code before. Now, but the beginning we can ignore for now. So this part, we will get back to that later. What it's all about is this line over here, where we have a function that's called total YTD. And then it starts with an expression, which is the sum of the sales amounts. And here we have our date field, okay? Exactly the two things that we dragged into the template before. What if you now in the future don't want to use quick measures, but you want to write a total year to date function from scratch? Then you could do it as follows. You can go here to FCT sales, new measure, and let's call this one total sales year to date. And we're going to write a total year to date calculation using the total YTD function, which we just learned from a quick measure. So let's select it by pressing tab. And here you see the syntax. So we have the expression, which is the sum of the sales amount. Okay, so instead of writing sum sales amount, we can refer back to the total sales measure that we calculated at the beginning, the explicit measure. Okay, so here you can just open up with a square bracket, and then you see all of the explicit measures, and then we select total sales. Press tab. What else do we need? We also need our date field, which comes from the dim date table. Okay, so select it by pressing tab. Now you might wonder, okay, what are the third and the fourth argument? Well, there we can add extra filters to this calculation, and we can change the end date for a year. So if you have a different fiscal year that doesn't go from January to December, you can change that over here. But for now, let's ignore that part because these are optional arguments because they show over here in square brackets. Okay, so we can close our brackets, press enter, and now you see here on the right hand side we have total sales year to date, which we can then use on our visualization, and it gives us exactly the same values as the quick measure that we used before. Okay, so now let's have a look at some of the other quick measures that are there. So I'm gonna go back to my total sales field, click on the drop down. I'm gonna go to our new quick measure dialog box, and then from the calculation drop down, we go over here to time intelligence. So we have year to date, quarter to date, month to date. Well, you get the idea. Then we also have year over year and quarter over quarter and month over month. Now let's go here for year over year change. Then we also need a base value, which is again our total sales. Then we have our date field again, which comes from the dim date table. And then also here we have to say the number of periods over which we want to calculate the change. Well, let's leave it as 1 and then press OK. Now let's have a look at the underlying DAX code again for our total sales year over year percentage measure. Okay, so you can simply click on the measure, go to your formula bar, and then you see the underlying code. So here this formula starts again with if is filtered, error, ignore that part. Where it gets interesting is on line number 5. Here we have calculated total sales. Now to get the date from 1 year ago, we have a function called date add. Okay, so date add also needs your date field. How many periods you want to go back? 1, therefore -1. And over here in the end, what is the period that you want to go back? Well, we have years. Okay, however, if you want to go 1 quarter back, we would just change that to quarter. All right. Well, if you work with variables, then you also need to say return. Now, what do we want to return? Well, we want to divide the total sales minus the previous year total sales by the previous year sales. And that gives you then the total sales year over year percentage change. All right. Now let's break this into different parts. Okay, so and write our measures from scratch using these functions that you see over here. So let's go again to FCT sales, And now we're gonna do it with explicit measures, but without using quick measures. Okay, so I'm gonna call this one total sales LY for last year. Okay, and we just have seen that if we want to have last year's values, we can use a function called calculate. Okay, so I just type in calculate, select it by pressing tab. It needs two things, an expression and a filter. Now the expression is again our total sales. Okay, so square bracket open. Here we have our total sales measure, select it by pressing tab. And then we need a filter. Okay, now let's for example take over here Q1 2019. Instead of showing here 57 million, we want to show 76 million. Okay, so we want to change the filter context from Q1 2019 to Q1 2018. And the function that allows you to change the date to last year is dateAdd. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, type in dateAdd. Again, we need our date field, which is dimDate date. Then how many intervals I want to move. Well, I want to go one interval back, and the interval is going to be a year. Close your brackets for the dateAdd function, then also close your brackets for the calculate function. Now let's add this one to our visualization. And you see for Q1 we now have 76 million, which is the value from last year. So if we want to calculate the year-over-year change, then we just take the total sales minus total sales LY. Okay, so I'm going to go back, new measure. Let's call this one total sales year-over-year. And here we can take our total sales measure and subtract our total sales from last year. So let's see if that worked. Let's take again 2019 Q1. We have the 57 million minus the 76 million gives us 18 million. Okay, that works. However, if we have a look at 2018 Q1, we have 76 million minus, well, nothing, because we don't have 2017 data, and therefore it gives me 76 million. And probably you want to show nothing when there's no total sales last year value. Okay, so we have to adapt our formula a little bit. Okay, so let's go back to our total sales year-over-year measure. And now I'm going to wrap this inside of an if function, because we want to check if there's a value for total sales last year, or at least if it's different from 0. Okay, so I can say if, and then we can refer to our total sales last year measure. If it's different from 0, then give me the total sales minus total sales last year. All right, and you see we have no value showing up if we don't have total sales last year. And same thing we can do for Q3 and Q4, okay? Because here we have the opposite problem. Here we do have total sales last year, but we don't have total sales for this year, okay? So I have to extend my logical condition here a little bit further, which we can do as follows. So let's go back to a formula. We can add another condition by putting in two ampersand signs, which means and, okay? Now, if you're coming from an Excel background, you can also use the AND function as well. That would also work. However, I personally prefer to write two ampersand signs. Okay, and here we also want to check if the total sales is different from 0. You see, now we don't have a value for total sales year-over-year when there is no total sales value. Okay, so now it gives us exactly the result that we are looking for. Now, just one small tip. It becomes more and more difficult to read this formula. So therefore, it's best practice to break it down over multiple lines to make it easier to read. However, this doesn't affect the functionalities. What you can do is go in front of your if function, press Shift Enter to go to the next line. And you do the same for the next part. So I go over here after the opening bracket of the if function, Shift Enter. Then we have our two conditions. And then after that comma, I'm going to do again Shift Enter. Now, this is the expression that I want to return. And the closing bracket, I would also put on a separate line so that you can see exactly where the if function starts and where it ends. And then this makes it much easier to read. Okay, so to get the total sales year-over-year as a percentage, writing our own DAX code, we just have to create one more measure. And let's call this one total sales year on year percentage. And here we just have to divide the total sales year over year by the denominator, which is then the total sales from last year. Okay, close your bracket. Now let's also add this measure to our table. And you see we have our percentage year on year change. However, it doesn't show as percentages yet. So let's go here to measure tools and then change the format to percentage. Now let's see if this corresponds to our quick measure from before. So I'm going to take that one as well and put it right next to it. Now you see that our results correspond to the quick measure. However, the quick measure also shows here minus 100% because we have this total sales from last year, even though there's no total sales value. Now, probably this is not what you want to show, however, and we kind of fixed that with our explicit measure that we wrote from scratch. So you see that quick measures there are super helpful to get started and learn more DAX functions. However, sometimes you need to adapt them a little bit to get exactly the result that you're looking for. Now, one thing I skipped at the beginning, and that is this if function that shows at the beginning of a quick measure. I'm going to go over here to my sales amount year to date quick measure that I calculated at the beginning. So here it starts with if is filtered, then date, then error. Now, what is it exactly checking for? Well, it checks if there is a Power BI provided date hierarchy. If I take my date field and put it onto my visualization, then it creates a hierarchy for me with the year, then the quarter, then the month, and then the day. Well, actually, in my data model, I just have one column, date. Okay, so it creates this hierarchy in the backend for me. And that is what you need to be able to work with a quick measure. And this date column has all of the existing days in the period that I'm analyzing. Okay, and that is important for time intelligence to work. Now, if I have a different date column that doesn't have this, for example, my order date column, and I drag that one onto rows, you see it doesn't create this date hierarchy for me, and I cannot use it in any of the quick measures. Now let me show you. I'm going to go over here to FCT sales, create a new quick measure. I'm going to go for year to date, and I'm going to go now to FCT sales and take my order date and put that one onto date. You see, only Power BI provided date hierarchies or primary date columns are supported. Okay, so make sure that you have a date column that contains all of the dates in the period that you're analyzing, and only those you can use for quick measures. Now, what if you want to work with a custom date table instead of the date hierarchy that Power BI provides you? Then, would quick measures still work? Well, yes. Now let's have a look how to do this. Well, if you go to File and then Options and Settings, Options, and then you go to Data Load, then here you can choose whether you want to have Auto, Date and Time. Well, this creates this built-in Power BI date hierarchy. Okay, now let's turn this off and create our own. Okay, so I'm gonna click on OK. I'm gonna go here to my date table, and over here I already have a ready-made formula that I just copy paste for my custom date table. The next step that is important is that you go to your date table, your custom date table, and mark it as a date table, where as a date column you have the date, and click OK. And now you can use your custom date table also for quick measures. Now let's give this a try. So over here we have the same visualization as I had with the built-in Power BI hierarchy, so year and quarter. And now I'm going to go over here to my FCT sales table and put in the total sales onto values. Okay, now I want to create a quick measure, so I'm going to go to the drop down and create a new quick measure where I'm going to have a year-to-date calculation where we take the total sales, and now we have a custom date table, and I take the date field, put it on there. You see there's no warning sign, click OK, and drag it onto the visualization. And you see we have now total sales year to date, and it works with a custom date table. So you don't necessarily need to work with the Power BI built-in date hierarchy. And if you're wondering why would you want to have a custom date table, because custom date tables gives you more flexibility and is more efficient. However, we're going to have a different video on that. In this video, you have seen how you can use quick measures to learn more about DAX and start writing your own DAX calculations, which gives you so much more flexibility. So quick measures, they are super useful, especially at the beginning, to get a jump start into writing DAX. If you want to learn more about DAX or Power BI in general, then consider subscribing to our channel. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you in the next one.